I've got to ask, especially to those of you watching this video as it's been released, how many of you came into this video wondering, what's this printer? Does anyone even know this exists? Elegoo made the odd decision to release this on the same day as their Black Friday sales and hid it right down at the bottom of the page. More people should be made aware of this printer because, despite it being a cheaper version of the original Jupiter, it holds its own as another large format 3D printer. It kind of makes sense that this was released quietly, as I expect Elegoo still have a bunch of original Jupiter stock, and this will be the clear and easy pick of the two for many new adopters. And oh yeah, hi, I'm Ross, and this is Firehammer Video, and that's the Elegoo Jupiter SE, which, if you haven't already guessed, is a big printer. You know, after the Mars being small and the Saturn being mid, this one being called the Jupiter makes sense. With a 12.8-inch 6K screen, well, a screen of 5448 by 3064 pixels, which is just a bit shy of 6K, this matches the original Jupiter in build area. In fact, both Jupiter printers have identical build volumes of 278 by 156 by 300mm. And with a 6K resolution, the pixel size of this is just 51 microns. And well, that's quite large, especially when compared to modern smaller printers and several of the larger format printers from other brands too. So yes, this is on the poorer side when it comes to print quality, but it is a tiny difference, and as I've said in many a large resin printer review, are you really looking at these to print small detailed models? Now, yeah, there's an argument that a big build plate has value in large batch production, and yes, there is a small quality drop in detailed models, but I expect most people looking at a printer of this size want it to print big things. That's really what it's made for anyway, but I'll talk about the quality of other models shortly. Going back to that large build plate, it's etched in the same way that Elegoo have done with the entirety of their latest Mars and Saturn printers, and I really love these build plates. They've got great adherence, but you can still get models off easily when you have your base exposure times dialed in. But the leveling mechanism is one place where this has been cheapened when compared to the original Jupiter, but still an upgrade when compared to most other Elegoo printers that just use a ball joint. This time, just like the Mars 4 Ultra and the Saturn 3 Ultra, Elegoo have gone with a common 4-bolt mechanism to level the bed at each corner. Leveling is a case of loosen the bolts, send the bed to home and tighten the bolts. That's the whole process, and whilst I've not had issues with this style of mechanism before, I've never had this mechanism on a printer this large, so time will tell how successful this is. Thankfully, if it goes off kilter, re-leveling is just as easy as initial leveling, it's just a messy job. But to do it with the vat in, even with resin in, and you'll be fine. Just make sure you wear gloves. One thing I really like about this printer, and it's a tiny thing, is the asymmetrical lever used to tighten the vat to the Z-arm. These are much easier to both tighten and loosen than a large circular bolt, though the big washer often gets in the way when trying to put the bed in place. The vat in this printer is huge, in fact it's significantly larger than the screen, and that's good because it's more likely to catch any resin splashes, and I immediately noticed that there's no ACF in sight here. This has a crystal clear PFA film, which means this printer is built for quality over speed. Now again, I've made the argument before that ACF is bad because it reduces surface quality, but like I just said about resolution, when printing large objects, would this even matter so much? I suppose that's down to you and your call about what you want in a printer of this size. Onto the other mechanics, which includes the dual linear rails. However, another downgrade from the Jupiter is that this has a traditional lead screw rather than the smoother ball screw of the other more expensive printer. And the lack of any visible cap on this Z-frame is another place where the printer comes across as cheap. And the rest of this printer, well, it's very typically modern Elegoo in terms of design and function. And I don't mean that in a bad way, because while some will look at the parts as cheap, others can justifiably not wish to pay the expense for what is little more in terms of quality of life features. The most glaring difference in this printer from the old Jupiter is the chassis. Instead of a big metal printer with a door, you now have the cheaper Elegoo style of a lift-off lid. This does have some attachable handles that go on the sides, though I'm not sure who thought adding them closer to the front rather than central was a good idea. It makes this back heavy when lifting it off. Again, it's not bad because this isn't heavy, it just feels a little awkward on your wrists. And this, coupled with the cutout in the rear, which must sit perfectly flush with the resin pump, it can be a tad annoying, though it does have an optional vent hole if you wish to connect up an extractor or connect it to the Mars Mate, but, well, hopefully by now we've all seen what that's capabilities are. Oh, and you also need to have space somewhere to put this lid when you're working inside the machine. The base chassis of this, however, is metal, and love it or hate it, but there's a big white stripe across the base of the printer. In case you can't tell by my tone, I'm not a fan, but that's just its looks. All of the power cables along with the USB port are on the side near the front for easy-ish access, but again, I find it cheap when a brand bungs power sockets on the side just to save money on internal cables and boards. But in this case, there wouldn't be much space because this printer has a fat ass, that's with a PH, and that's in order to keep the components cool during operation. This large angled part of the chassis is used to house the fans and vent hot air out of the printer. The unit has some large rubbery feet, something that other brands have really cheapened out for before. I know you don't want me to talk about feet on a printer, but when things go sliding across a tabletop, yeah, it matters. The accessories box comes with the usual affair of printer stuff like a putty knife, a plastic scraper, filters, gloves, and a cheap USB drive that I always recommend replacing, and in my case the one that came with it took 3 attempts just to get the files off it onto my PC. Also in this box is Elegoo's signature carbon filter unit, and this plugs into one of the USB ports inside the machine and filters out all of the nasty smells you can get from more pungent resins. And yes, like in every review, I could talk about the interface, but it's typical Elegoo at this point. It's starting to look its age, and it could do with a spruce up, but it seems that Elegoo are showing no signs of caring about this because, again, it works. All the functions you need are there, and it's in a clean and intuitive way. So I suppose fine, if it's not broke, don't fix it. And the other feature of this machine, though this was also present on the original Jupiter, is the resin feed pump. You do need to install this yourself, and again, it looks and feels pretty cheap. Now, in order to get this working, you need to connect up the hoses to an end cap which fits in a very specific bottle type. Elegoo's usual bottle type, and well, I don't have any of these bottles at present, so I printed everything in this review using Frozen's Aqua 8K resin. Now unfortunately, this means I didn't get to test the pump, and honestly I'm glad. Look, I'm sure it works and it will slowly pump resin in and out of the vat, but I've never liked using these. It's faster to just pour resin in and pour it out. If it really matters to you, then please watch another review. I'm not using it. They're horrible and they often leave crap dangling out the back of my printers, which slowly drip feed resin all over my worktops and carpets. Now, in your case, you probably won't be moving the printer in and out of different spaces to make way for another that you need to review. Your printer will probably stay in place with a bottle attached, even if it's empty, for ages. I hate them. I hate them, but that's me and my situation. However, yes, I do understand that when trying to get resin out, it's far easier to pump it than try to hold an empty bottle steady with a funnel, and you slowly try to maneuver a large and heavy vat so you can pour it in. So yes, I can see it being useful here. So I will talk about how it should work briefly. Basically, you've got 2 pipes that come out and go into a custom lid, and that lid only works on certain bottle types. And those lids also have a sensor in them to know when the bottles are full. Now that's good at least, because I've had pumps from other brands and they keep filling resin into the bottle beyond its capacity. And that wasn't a fun cleanup, and also one of the reasons why I hate them. In order to install this, it slots into the second USB port inside the printer and screws into place. Oddly, the manual doesn't actually explain which of the many screws to use for this, so I guessed it was the small silver ones, and well, it seems to be connected okay. Let's talk about something I do care about, print quality. Well, I'm actually super impressed, to be honest. Despite its 51 micron pixel size, the resulting prints are really sharp, and I expect that this is due to the cob light source that they've used matching the original Jupiter. What you get here are sharp prints. But a drum I've banged for so long is that when you enable enough anti-aliasing and image blur, you'll struggle to see any sign of voxel lines on any printers anyway, especially when printing big things. But when it comes to small things, it's the layer lines that are more obvious in miniatures than voxel lines anyway, and you can reduce these with a reduction in layer height in the printer's settings. I'm sure you'll agree when looking at these miniatures, they're hardly bad, are they? Yes, you can get smoother quality, but it's smoother. You're unlikely to be getting more details. When looking at Wolverine, for example, this bust I always print, for even things of this size, it's good enough. Yes, on some of my higher resolution printers I've owned, you can see a micro level of detail in the top of the cowl, giving it a slight leathery texture, but as soon as I would apply any amount of paint, that detail's completely gone at this scale. So honestly, does that extra detail even matter to you? Again, I'll go back to, it depends what you want to print. And printers of this size are made for printing big things. And this is where I need to show off the most beautiful model I have ever printed. And if you've watched my videos before, you'll know I'm a huge fan of Blackforge games. And I'm not sponsored to say this in any way, guys, just like with CA Sculpts models. I'm showing these because they're incredible. I've printed every one of their previous sculpts, and my favourite is the very large Tenjin sculpt that they first released. Well, that was until they released this. This wall-hanging display piece is beyond incredible. The mind of Tenjin is packed with intricate detail no matter where you look. Even the wall bracket that you'll never see once it's mounted is packed with detail. So even if you don't buy this printer, I'm sure you want to buy one of these models. And, as I was saying, when printing large stuff like this, the Jupiter SE and its equivalent size printers are so incredibly useful to have. It's just a shame here that the lid is so blooming awkward. So, in summary, this is a great unit, and I know I've said cheap enough times in this review to make you think I'm turning into a bird, but this is Elegoo's approach to most products now. Their machines work, and they produce decent results. They aren't the sexiest or the most well built, but like all other Elegoo models of late, this has a nice balance of features at the most competitive price for what it has. This is why so many people are buying Elegoo machines. And that breeds a larger user base that you're more likely to get support with on yours if you get stuck or get things wrong. And again, when looking at these, don't expect small models to show the highest quality, but if you know that and are after a printer to print big stuff or more little stuff at this quality level, here's a decent and affordable option. I really can't knock it. Like most, but not all Elegoo printers, it's not, oh my god, wow, amazing, but it does the job, and it does it well. I want to say thanks for watching, and a huge thanks goes out to our members who help enable us to make more content like this. So thanks guys, their names are up on the screen right now. Please consider joining them for things like exclusive videos, early access, and priority comment replies from me. But at the very least, if you want to support us, you can do that by clicking like. You can also make sure to subscribe. Also, go down to the bottom and drop a comment, because that feeds the YouTube algorithm and more people out there get to watch videos like this. So thanks again for watching, and until next time, that'll do, pig. That'll do. Fohammer out.